Hello, I'm Brian Critchell and I'm here today with Stuart Southall, who is Chairman of the Association of Consulting Actuaries and also, in his day job, Chairman of the Actuarial Consulting Services of Punter Southall. Stuart, welcome. Thanks for coming. You've taken the reins as Chairman of the ACA at probably the most challenging time that we've experienced in the pensions industry ever. So how does that feel, and what pressure does that put on you in your role with the ACA to respond and help shape the future?
Yeah. Well, I think the ACA, you've hit on an important point there, it does try to shape the future as far as it can, but ultimately, like all lobbying organisations, it's not in our hands to do that. I mean, primarily, it is only politicians, in my view, that can shape the future. And the ACA can only point out the pros and cons of different courses of action, how it thinks the future might look, and how the future might look if certain steps aren't taken. And we have been doing that consistently, we feel, over the years. As you say, it is a uniquely challenging time. But such things as low interest rates, volatile inflation, and improving longevity aren't new factors. They've been with us for quite some time. I think, as you suggest in your question, we are possibly encountering a perfect storm of some of these factors, and that has been highly detrimental to pensions in the private sector. But ultimately, I don't think it is within the ACA's gift to shape the future. That has to be politicians. It has to be led by ministers.
But within the industry itself, we have defined benefit pensions for our clients moving to the end game, in the private sector at least.
Yep.
And given the general disenchantment with savings amongst the younger generation, Generation Y and so on, where does that leave your members, the ACA members? Never mind, shaping the future. Their lifeblood has been consulting and designing and valuing some very complex pension arrangements in the past. So where does this leave them in this new world?
Well, I think it leaves them with two quite distinct challenges. The first is to deal with the defined benefit final salary legacy, which you allude to, and I'll come back to that. And the second is to help their client with any replacement arrangements which they choose to put in place. And those at the moment, again, as you imply in your question, are starkly different to the final salary schemes that the private sector used to know and love and worked very successfully with a decade ago. So in terms of the legacy issues, I think particularly with what's been happening in recent years, the run-off period for those is still extremely extended. The vast majority of those schemes are closed to new entrants. I think our last survey said over 90%. An increasing number are closed to future accruals. I think our last survey said nearly 40% and going up quite quickly. And so we have a rather interesting closed community which we have to look after. It's deeply complex, as you suggest, and I have likened it in a number of public speeches, and will do so again, as rather like a gated community, in which the super rich are living super protected. It's got its own police force, it's got its high walls, very nice if you're inside the walls, not so good if you're outside them. And I think that potentially is deeply divisive. We can't take our eye off the replacement arrangements, which good employers are putting in place, but for reasons, again, we might explore, those are almost uniquely pure defined contribution. And the problem with those, as you will understand, is that it has moved all the risks, or nearly all of the risks, from the sponsor to the employee. And I'm afraid the vast majority of employees are very poorly equipped to deal with those risks. So it's a rather uncomfortable bipolar world at the moment. We have the people in the protected community, I would say over-regulated, over-protected, over-policed, and the people outside with a rather poor deal, which they don't fully understand, and which they're ill-equipped to deal with.
That's very interesting, the visual concept of a divisive gated community with those on the inside, those on the outside. Some might say that is the basis of the argument in the public sector at the moment.
Absolutely.
But I think we might have to come back to that. But those who are within the charm circle, as that shrinks, you talk about an extended runoff, but over time surely the trend will be towards more commoditisation and looking for economies. So we'll need less actuaries, will we? We'll need less people doing the same jobs that they have been doing. So what are they going to do in future?
Well, I think that is a possibility, and the association and indeed the actuarial profession are very alive to that possibility, and actuaries are, with some success, getting into new areas of work. So enterprise risk management, for example, from a slow base is starting to build up. People in risk management more generally is starting to build up. There's been a big growth of actuaries in the general insurance world and a steady growth of actuaries in the life insurance world. So I'm optimistic for the profession as a whole, but possibly less optimistic for actuaries in the pensions space. Having said that, I think we've had a number of crises and scandals over the years which perhaps suggest that we would have been better had actuaries been a bit more involved than they have been. I mean, I think in terms of my analogy, I wasn't really thinking of the actuaries as the policemen. They're more like the traffic wardens within that gated community. You know, I think the policemen are the regulators. And I'm not against regulation per se, but there is a big price, I feel, that's being paid by the younger generation, Generation Y, who you mentioned too, we might come back to, because the baby boomers, who are predominantly inside the gates, do benefit from these, what are now over-generous benefits, which are overprotected.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I think that everything that you have said will strike a chord with our members, and I hope that it will give them pause for thought and a desire to reach for the keyboard and give you their feedback. So if you agree or disagree with Stuart's analysis, do please let us have your views, and we'll ensure that they're fed back to you. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.